Welcome back to the Coming Out Happy podcast. We're your hosts, Danny and Keely, your LGBTQ plus life coaches. As an LGBTQ plus adult, we know it can be complicated, but here's where we break it all down for you, and you can learn all about becoming your most authentic self so you can create really healthy relationships. Our goal from this podcast is to help you uncover all that makes you who you are and step into that future you. This podcast is your weekly check-in to focus on yourself and start taking actions towards the life and relationships you've always wanted.
If you're listening on Apple Podcasts and you love this episode, make sure you leave a 5-star review or rating. We can't wait to hear from you. Now let's get into it. What's up, everyone? It's Danny and Keely. We are so happy you're tuning in with us today and really just taking some time. It's so important that you do that for yourself. We're going to have an amazing topic for you today, but before we get into it, there's a few things that I want you to know. So if you're not following us on Instagram yet, at Coming Out Happy, make sure you head on over there. That's where you're going to catch us on Mondays. Every single Monday on our lives, we go live at 3 p.m. PST, 6 p.m. EST. So figure out which time zone you're in and make sure you put it on your calendar. We can't wait to see you there. It's all about self-growth, reflection, and really diving into who you are. We have a lot of fun on Mondays. And then every Friday, we're going to post this podcast for you. So make sure you subscribe, download, maybe set a little reminder again for yourself. That way you can really stay in touch and make sure that you are taking that time out of your week for this self-growth and discovery journey that you're currently on. And then if you're really loving the lives, the posts, everything that we do, you can't get enough of this podcast. I'm telling you right now, you're going to want to check out our program, Pride Amplified. It's all about stepping into your most authentic self and creating really healthy relationships. Danny and I are here to support and guide you all along the way. And sometimes you just need a little bit of accountability and support to get you there. And that's exactly what we do with you. So thank you so much. We are super excited to get into our episode today. And let's get into it. Hey everyone, it's Danny and Keely. Thanks so much for tuning in with us this week. This episode is going to be really incredible because we're going to be talking about something that hits very close to home for me, and I know a lot of our listeners as well, and people that we work with every single day have mentioned very similar things, and it's something that I'm still working through. I really am, and I think that's okay, and it's religious trauma. So let me get into a little bit of my story, and we'll kind of cover what it looks like to continue to heal yourself. More than anything, it wasn't just about the religious trauma wasn't just about what held me back from coming out. It's still affecting my life today. And I think a lot of us, even after we've come out, we think that, everything's going to be great and it's all, rainbows and butterflies to experience all the love and the happiness and freedom. But really, there could be a lot from your childhood and a lot from how you grew up that's still affecting you and the way that you live your life today. So that's what I want to talk about, and we'll kind of give you some tips for healing and how you can start that journey of stepping into who you are and living a life that's for you. So let me share a little bit about my story, and I've talked about this a couple times, but I think the last time I spoke about this, it was coming from the perspective of healing from my family and how I came out to them. And so this time I want to talk about how it's still affecting my life today. So let's get into it. I grew up, and some of you may know this, in a really Christian, conservative environment. From, the time I was growing up, I went to church on Sundays, and I went to, the Sunday school where I learned, and I had my friends during the week at the Bible studies. I was involved. I was there every step of the way. And I loved, going because I felt safe there. I felt like that was a really exciting experience where I got to meet new people. And that was the beginning for me. It was nice to sing the songs, and it was nice to feel like you were a part of something. I think more than anything, we all want to be a part of something. And that's why I loved the church so much when I was growing up before I knew much about myself. And as I grew up through that, I went to a private high school and I ended up going on to a private college. So this stuff was ingrained into me, and specifically grew up in a Southern Baptist, evangelical church, and that's what it looked like. And so a lot of that has to go back to how people believe politically about things, and it's just very different from really the LGBTQ plus community, anything that I believe and experience now. So all of that was with me. And when I started uncovering more about who I was, and I started learning what it meant to be me, and I started exploring my sexuality, I felt inherently really, really wrong, because the people that I shared it with and that I trusted, because I trusted anyone that was called themselves a Christian, that's how naive I was. And looking back now, I can see that that was just how I lived my life. I was told something and I believed it. And now, of course, I explore everything and try to figure out what I believe and what feels good to me. But when I was going through that and I finally, had come out, I was told that it was wrong, and everything that I'd ever known and what I had felt safe and comfortable in and what I had loved so much about being part of a community felt like it was all taken away from me. I don't know how many of you can relate to this right now, but it felt like it was ripped from under me, and it made me think that I was wrong. So from that moment, I thought in my mind that I was a bad person and that I needed to overcompensate. And also, I thought that maybe I shouldn't be the way that I was. And I tried to, go on dates, and I tried to change myself in a lot of ways. And I tried to change my sexuality. I really did. But when I realized that this is who I was, and this is exactly who I was made to be, as I trusted that within myself. No one else told me that I was right. I had to choose me because it was a way for me to preserve my own, self. I had to figure out a way to survive, right? Unless I really felt like I wasn't good at that time if I didn't choose myself, because I was so sad and I was so lonely and I felt like no one understood me and I felt like an outcast and all of these things. And those emotions and those feelings of shame carried with me throughout until my adult life. They carried with me from those moments of early on and not feeling accepted. Of course, there was always, comments made in the church about Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, and all of these really hard things that you have to hear. And that stuck with me. And so now in my adult life, let's move past all of that I went through. And it's still showing up in my life today, because a lot of times what I see myself doing is I try to not show my full self. And I think that's a big part of how I hid and how I tried to survive in that religious, Christian environment, is I hid myself for a long time. And I see it in my work today. Sometimes we get on this podcast or sometimes we get on a live and I don't share all of the details, which maybe I should. And maybe I need to open up more, and maybe I need to be more real and vulnerable. But a part of me holds back because I always had to be okay. I always had to make sure that what I was doing was okay by everybody else and everyone accepted me and I wasn't going to cause any problems. And I think now I'm at a point where I'm starting to heal and really work through that. And I am sharing a lot more about that maybe I'm not okay all the time. And there are a lot of things that upset me. And there's, trauma that I've had to work through because of how I was raised, because of the environment I grew up in. And a lot of that too is, stepping into a new version of myself, letting go and disconnecting of these old beliefs that I have to be okay, that I have to be perfect, that I have to be a good Christian, whatever that meant at the time, and that I have to, follow the rules. But really, maybe there isn't any rules that I have to follow, and maybe they were wrong. Maybe I'm right. And I have to go by what feels good to me, and I think I've based my life a lot more now off of the feelings of what feels right and what doesn't feel right and how I treat people. And it's not just the black and white of what I was always told. And that's what I'm figuring out now and trying to understand so that I can heal and move on. And of course, it's always going to be a part of my story that I went through that and I navigated that, and I am grateful in a lot of ways because it taught me a lot, and I'm able to help a lot of people that are navigating that similar situation. But it's hard still. I mean, I'm human. When I look back at it, I sometimes I'm frustrated that I didn't feel always loved and accepted, and I didn't always get that reassurance that I was on the right path, and that I was told that I was wrong and that I was going to go to hell and all of these things. But I have to move through that, and that's a part of my healing process, and that's a part of why I'm talking about it today, is because we have to heal, and we're not perfect. And because we're not perfect doesn't mean that we're bad people. It means that we're human. It means that we're able to live and enjoy life freely. I mean, we're here to, and this is what I believe, that we're here to make an impact. We're here to share stories. We're here to connect with other humans. And what I've realized is that I can never connect with anybody if I'm not vulnerable and real, and I'll never be able to create authentic connections if I'm not my authentic self. So a lot of this is showing up in my adult life today, and something that's still not always easy to talk about, but I'm doing my best, and I hope I'm doing okay, Danny.
No, you're doing great.
But this is the first time I've ever really talked about how my, religious trauma and what I've grown up in has, affected who I am today and is showing up in my adult life.
No, you're just being real with what's going on. And it's so interesting because I didn't grow up religious at all. So it's just very interesting to hear the other side of what you've been through and how that held you back from being your most authentic self and creating relationships that felt genuine to you. I never had to go through that. I had a completely different story, which it looked similar from our actions, but what we learned growing up was different. I want to kind of ask you, how is it showing up for some of the clients that we work with? And not all of the clients that we work with in our programs grew up in religious environments. So I more relate to the ones who didn't, but you definitely relate to the ones who do. So how do you think it currently holds them back, and how are they working towards becoming their most authentic self?
Yeah, I think for the ones that did grow up in the religious environment, it's almost like a prison in their mind. And a lot of times what happens is we go back and forth with ourselves, and we feel like we're at war with ourselves because we've been told this, but we feel this, and we're just going back and forth all the time. And so for them, it's a matter of changing their mindset. It's a matter of changing their perspective on how they see themselves, and understanding some really important things about understanding why people do the things they do, and why people are the way they are, and understanding beliefs. And it's about understanding your life from a higher perspective, because this stuff is fucking hard, and it really is. I mean, it's really complicated, it's really confusing, and no one can explain. Like, I still don't understand, and I don't think I ever will, why people don't love and accept everybody. Like, just doesn't make sense to me. Like, really, really doesn't. And I think that when we are able to look at ourselves as love, and we can pull ourselves away and look at it from a higher perspective, that's when I'm personally able to understand why, my parents and my grandparents believed the way they did, and all of these other things. And we're able to, trust ourselves and understand our own intuition of maybe they don't always know what's best, and maybe we do know what's best for ourselves. And just because they're our parents, or just because they're older or wiser, doesn't mean they're right. So it's a matter of our clients uncovering their beliefs and what it means to be who they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I also wanted to dive into learning how to love themselves. Can you kind of touch on that part a little bit?
I mean, I think that, are you talking specifically about clients that grew up in religion?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is something that we talk about with every single one of our clients, but just specifically with your experience and the disconnect from yourself, how you are currently helping our LGBTQ plus adult clients learn how to love themselves.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good question. I think, something about growing up in religion is that I don't know how many of you have heard this before, but the I'm third lifestyle is kind of the mentality that I grew up with, which is, God first, others second, yourself last. So you don't ever really feel super connected to yourself. And that's something that showed up in my life a lot, and a lot of our clients too, that they don't really know who they are. And let's just talk real here. You can't love yourself if you don't know who you are. What are you loving? We can't respect something you don't know. And I think that same thing with, friendships. If you look at a friendship, if you don't know, love, and you don't know and love your friend, if someone says something bad about them, you're not going to, stand up for them. So it's the same thing with yourself. You have to learn how to get to know yourself so that you can love these parts of you. But when you felt really far away from yourself your entire life, this can feel like a really hard task. And so we work on the simple things of getting to know themselves and connecting to these parts that maybe they've lost over the years, and understanding what it means to enjoy the small moments in life and really soak up this new way of being for them. So, and I think how they think about themselves too is a big part of that, and the deep inner work that we have to uncover, because a lot of times we don't always say the nicest things to ourselves, but you may not even realize it. So it's a lot of what we work on is the mentality, I would say, the mindset of
it's kind of like ripping everything that they knew and creating a new identity for themselves. I think that's no matter how they've been raised, everyone who comes to us usually is figuring out who they are, is disconnecting from everything that they've known, and they're ready to become their best self in whatever way that means. They want to learn how to connect with the deepest parts of them, learn how to make decisions that feel really good to them and not to please other people. All of these things are just so similar. And when you're talking about it, I know we've had such different experiences, but all of this, it just feels very connected. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you have any other questions? I like answering your questions because sometimes I can't always think about what exactly I wanted to say.
I don't know. What do you think? Is there something that you would want to share just to anyone who's currently going through it and, needs that extra support right now?
Yeah, I would say I want you to give yourself permission to explore something different than what you've always known. And that was really scary for me, especially when Danny first brought up a different perspective and the whole idea of spirituality. I was really taken back.
And spirituality to me is not religious. It's more of connecting with the universe, connecting with myself, my what?
Energy.
Yeah, my own energy, my own intuition, which doesn't have as much rules, I guess, as these religions that are around us.
Yeah, so when that was brought up to me, I was really taken back, and I was almost thinking maybe I should break up with her. And this was in the very beginning of our relationship, just because I was told that we were supposed to be equally yoked. And
what does that mean?
Honest to God, I have no idea. I think it means that you have the same beliefs, but and see, all of these are like canned Christian responses that are just ingrained.
But these are the things that have been ingrained that you're still currently working to deconstruct in your life.
I'm literally tearing apart my entire life right now. But it's all for healing. It's all for living a life that's for me.
And I also, I don't know who needs to hear this too, but some of the people that we do work with as well remain in their religion. And I don't want to be kind of giving one or the other perspective, because however you believe, it's totally
what you feel
okay.
Is right. It's what you feel is right. Maybe you take bits and pieces. Maybe you still want to be a part of an affirming church, whatever that looks like for you. I'm just explaining my experience of it and how I've navigated it and how I'm healing from what I grew up in, which maybe had a completely different experience. I have no idea. And I think that we all have different experiences. And I think that's where the empathy and the higher self comes in, when you're able to look at a situation and you're able to see, you know what? I'm a different person. I see it from only my viewpoint. I have no idea how Danny views religion. Probably not as angry as I am about it. But you see it in a different way than I do. And it's a part of the process of just who you are and your journey.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people get very hurt just by who I've talked to. You know, I think
you've watched me literally go through it.
It's been very difficult, but you know, for some people, it brings them love and joy, and whatever people connect with, whatever they disconnect with, that's their journey.
What would you say, like, you've watched me go through on your end of someone that's watching from the outside?
I mean, I've just watched you have to tear apart everything you've known because it wasn't making you happy.
Yeah.
I think that's the whole thing at the end of the day. You decided that it wasn't making you feel good. And even though you weren't religious, even coming into our relationship, it wasn't like you were practicing anything. You were still deconstructing everything that you had known because you wanted to create a different life for yourself. You wanted to make decisions for yourself. And it seemed really scary at first because you were hit with this roadblock of I've been this one person for so long, and I don't think it's serving me anymore. And I need to let go. I need to shed this old way of being.
It's a grieving process.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of fear.
Yeah.
A lot of fear. I remember, like, crying to you a lot about it.
Definitely.
Because I was scared. I was going to go to hell.
Yeah, and, you know, I remember I don't know if you want to share, but the one time where you, like, announced to me.
Oh, go ahead. You're more than welcome to.
Well, I want you to share it.
Yeah, I remember, this was, a year ago. I remember, and this is, I'm being very transparent and honest with you. This is still something I work through. It's that a year ago, I had told Danny, as I'm deconstructing all of this and figuring out what I believe and what feels good to me.
I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I was thinking, isn't that recent? I feel like I've had
it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago, and I looked at Danny, and I was like, I started whispering. I was like, I don't think I, believe in the Bible anymore. And then I was like, I don't really think I believe what I grew up with. And she was like, what do you mean? And I forget what did I say after. You were like, Keely, you can say it. And I was like,
it's okay to say it out loud if that's what you,
I was
however
whispering,
you believe.
I was whispering. I didn't want, the church to hear me. But I think, too, it was something I was whispering to Danny. I was like, I don't think I'm a Christian anymore. And she's like, Keely, you can say it louder. And I was like, I don't know.
I think in that moment,
remember the first time I said it?
Really decided to let go of what she had known, and now she was proudly figuring out her new way of living. And that's something that all of us are figuring out in our own ways. Whether you're coming from religion or you're just coming from a family who may have taught you something different, anything like that. We're all trying to figure out what it is that we believe. Sometimes it holds us back when we just cling on to our past, and it prevents us from living a life that feels really good to us. And we see it really affecting a lot of our clients' relationships as well, because however they believe, it pours into the rest of their life. It affects their career choices. It affects how long they stay in relationships because they think that's what they're supposed to do. All of these different aspects of their life are affected by how they were raised. And I think it's just an interesting topic to kind of talk about, but this is what we love to talk about. And I love that Keely gave more of a deep dive into what she had been through and how it's still showing up in her life today. And she has to be proactive to continue to uncover who her most authentic self is. It's not just a one-stop journey, That's why
I kind of laugh sometimes when people tell me that they're fine, because most of the time, nobody's fine. And the authentic journey never stops. I mean, everything, and I think we can convince ourselves, we were just speaking about this a couple weeks ago on our live, that we can convince ourselves our lives are great and everything's fine, and that's the perfectionism in us. I've done it myself, had a good job,
or maybe it's just like a disconnect of pushing off what it is that you may know. Maybe you're trying to distract yourself from something that's actually going on.
Yeah, and I think we can, not want to take a look at the deeper parts of our lives, because this is probably one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. But we really are happy that you were able to listen to this podcast, and I hope that maybe if you resonated in some way, or maybe it didn't, but you had a new perspective from this, I hope that you were able to connect in some way, and you can listen and know that we're here to be raw and real and vulnerable with you. And each time that we record this podcast, each time that we're growing in ourselves, as Danny and I continue to grow in who we are too.
We're always going to continue to work on ourselves. That's our promise to us and to you.
Yeah, it's really important, and just know that we're going to continue to get more real, vulnerable, and honest with you all the time as we are on our own healing journey too. You know, as well as the clients that we work with, we're all navigating this together, and sometimes we can help each other to really get to that next place. So thank you so much for listening today. If you have any questions, comments, you want to leave a review on our Apple podcast, we'd love for you to do so. We're so happy to have you here, and just want you to know that you're valid no matter where you are in your journey. If you're looking for more support on how you can be a part of our world and step into your authentic self, deconstruct some of these beliefs that you had, and figure out actually what you want to believe, that's where you can click the link in our bio on Instagram at Coming Out Happy and check out our program, Pride Amplified. It's all about this new journey, recreating yourself and living a life that's for you to create those healthy relationships, which we know are so important. So thank you so much for tuning in today, and we'll see you all very soon.